let's go ahead and move on. Alec Baldwin. So we wanted to give an update, and we covered this case a lot, at the time. Obviously, it was very much in the news. And there's a new FBI report, as you said, FBI forensic report that has been obtained by ABC News, which really casts doubt on a lot of Alec Baldwin's story. Let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen. So, according to this FBI forensic report, the gun that was used in the fatal shooting on the Rust movie set could not have been fired without pulling the trigger. Now, the reason that this matters is that Alec Baldwin had come out and said that he believed, number one, he was handling a gun without any sort of live ammunition, and that when it went off, the live bullet went ahead and struck Hutchins. Now, he claims in the past that he did not fire the gun. Now, you'll recall this was a big controversy here because I think it was back in December. You and I discussed it, I remember, because you talked to your dad, where he said, quote, the trigger wasn't pulled. Quote, I didn't pull the trigger. He said it twice on the record in an ABC News interview with George Stephanopoulos. Very clear about what he did. Now, this also, again, ignited a debate because your father was saying, well, technically, accidental discharge could happen. All of these things are possible. Other gun experts were like, yeah, theoretically, it's possible, all of that. Well, according to the FBI forensics, they said that is not possible. With the hammer fully cocked, quote, the gun could not have been made to fire without a pull of the trigger while the working internal components were intact and functional. Yeah. That is, again, according to their actual report. And it could, I want to be clear, is that it could lead to developments in the case. However, I want to represent Mr. Baldwin's side. His attorney put this statement out in response to this. Quote, the critical report is the one from the medical examiner who concluded this was a tragic accident. This is the third time New Mexico authorities have found Baldwin had no authority or knowledge of the allegedly unsafe conditions on the set, and that he was told by the person in charge of safety on the set that the gun was, quote, cold, and believed that the gun was safe. The FBI report is being misconstrued. The gun fired in testing only one time without having to pull the trigger when the hammer was pulled back and the gun broke in two different places. FBI was unable to fire the gun in any prior test, even when pulling the trigger, because it was in such poor condition. But then that even leads to questions of like, what is going on with this gun? How did it even make it onto this set? It was interesting. I remember George Clooney was like flaying the situation because he's like, look, I work with a lot of guns on set. He's like, every single time I do, I take it open, I show it to all the camera guys, to everybody who's around me. He goes, I've never even heard the phrase cold gun. And I mean, Clooney worked on a lot of these movie sets. So whatever the hell was going on this set, it wasn't good. And look, it's just a further development. It does at least say that, look, Baldwin is clearly a tragic situation. He may not just remember. He may have convinced himself in his mind that he didn't pull the trigger.
That's true.
But, I mean, look, according to the FBI, he probably did.
People's capacity for self-delusion very, very high.
It's a crazy situation.
Horrific. Yeah, I mean, very tragic situation. No one is saying that he wanted to kill this person. The response, because remember, part of what came out and what we covered a lot of at the time, too, was how lax and chaotic and haphazard this film production was. And in particular, there was a lot of scrutiny on what's called the armorer, who is in charge on the set of handling all the weapons and making sure that they don't have live ammunition in them, making sure they're in proper condition, like you are in charge of dealing with all of the weapons that are on the set. And there was a response also from her attorney, who said these new filings demonstrate various production member, read Alec Baldwin, attempts from the very beginning to shirk responsibility and scapegoat Hannah, a 24-year-old armorer, for this tragedy. Hannah was tasked with doing two jobs, including props assistant and the very important job as armorer, but not given adequate time and training days to do so, despite repeated requests or the respect required of the armorer's position and responsibilities. Remember, there were crew members who had quit shortly before this because of working conditions, because they weren't able to, sleep, because the conditions on set were chaotic and haphazard. And then this woman, Hannah, was, really, I think this was her first time in this job. And so none of this ultimately answers the big question of how the hell did live ammunition end up in this gun? Yeah. And we still don't know the case, but at least, Baldwin's defense that he basically did everything right and he didn't even pull the trigger, a piece of that now appears to be debunked. Because it's one thing to say, okay, in theory, if you had this type of gun, maybe this could have happened. But the FBI was examining the specific gun to see whether this was possible, and at least their conclusion is, no, it's not.
Takeaway for me is when the union guys are like, hey, there's some really screwed up stuff going on here, listen to them.
And guns are involved?
Yeah, listen to them whenever they're like, this is insane, a crazy workplace. Don't try and just hire scabs in order to like bring down your production budget, because I actually think that's a massive takeaway, which is when you're handling live ammunition, firearms, and all this stuff, maybe, work with the professionals.
Yeah, don't cut corners on that particular aspect of the production.
That's right. Okay.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.